So trade tensions between the United States and China have been escalating, and although Washington is trying to ease tensions, it appears to be affecting the global economy as well as Korea's local currency. For more on this, we're joined today by Shim Myungkyu, Associate Professor of Economics at Yonsei University. Professor Shim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So the IMF now warns that the global economy is showing signs of strain amid tariff risks and trade tensions, and it also expected the Korean economy to grow by 0.8%. What's your take on this?
Yeah, overall, the new IMF estimate is slightly adjusted upward, which is basically almost identical to the previous one, which makes sense to me. In particular, the expected growth rate on the Korean economy has slightly increased by only about 0.1 percentage point higher than before. I basically agree with the warning that the uncertainty about tariff and trade can drag down the global economy. We even observed for the last several days that the U.S. president changed its stand towards the trade tension with China, which further escalated trade uncertainty, which it has stayed at the historically high level since the early 2025. And also the heightened policy uncertainty in the US with the government shutdown and political pressure on the Fed can be another factor that seems to be a downside risk ahead of the global economy. In terms of Korea, which is a small open economy that really relies on the state of the global economy, I also agree with the IMF that the growth rate would not be higher than 1%, given all the constraints such as tariff uncertainty and the political uncertainty that it faces.
Right, and because of that trade tension, the Korean won is at its weakest level against the dollar in around 5 months. Are trade tensions between the U.S. and China the main reason behind this, and do you expect this trend to continue?
Yes, I expect that such a trend with low-valued Korean won would be somewhat continued for a while. First of all, uncertainty about the trade and the policy does not seem to become lower very soon. I, together with my co-author, found that when there is an increase in uncertainty, regardless of the uncertainty measure that is used for the analysis, tends to lower the value of Korean won. And given that the Korean economy faces different types of heightened uncertainty, I guess the rally would continue. Second, the uncertain state of the tariff conversation with the US seems to continue so that it can make the investors to worry about the Korean economy. Because the Korean economy, as I pointed out earlier, heavily depends on the trade, losing the competitiveness in the US market due to higher tariff rate makes people to lower their expectations on the future path of the Korean economy. And this makes the Korean won to be less attractive. However, I would like to point out that the low Korean won would be a kind of good news for the exporting firms because it lowers the price of the goods that is exported from Korea. So it might cancel out, at least partially, the negative effect of higher tariff.
I see. And there's also uncertainty surrounding the trade negotiations between Seoul and Washington, as they've yet to reach an agreement on tariffs. The Korean government says Washington, has presented a new alternative proposal regarding the $350 billion investment fund. How do you think the South Korea-U.S. tariff negotiations will play out?
Why I really hope the trade deal to be made very soon, but I'm not so sure if it can close very soon. This is because the US government does not keep its consistency when finishing the trade deals with other countries. And this problem does not seem to apply to Korea alone. We see the same situation constantly pops up between the trade deal with between the US and Japan, EU and China. I particularly think that the government needs to smartly argue that the Korean government should consider the usual Koreans' opinions seriously because the recent events from the US, such as deportation of the Korean workers, put pressures on the Korean government not to yield too much during the trade deals.
I see. And Professor Shim, before I let you go, Samsung Electronics posted its biggest profit in 3 years yesterday, with third quarter operating profit exceeding market expectations. And it was actually up more than 30% compared to the year before. What's behind this, and will the booming trend in semiconductor industry continue for the time being?
The most important factor behind such good news for Samsung Electronics seems to be the DS part. Its operation profit was zero point 0.7 billion won, which increased by about 17 times from the previous quarter, which is really a huge change. And this is driven by the increased demand for the memory chips thanks to the AI booms. And another important factor was its success in selling the new smartphone, which enables Samsung Electronics to earn about zero point 0.3 billion won from the smartphone production part alone. And the state of the market seems to be also favorable for Samsung Electronics, at least for a while, because the market for DRAM memory chip is expected to expand more in the upcoming quarter, according to the market research firm.
That's good to hear. All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.